is things of my own. And you might remember, well, again, the elders in the group will remember, a Calabath had literally Balrogs in it from, Lord of the Rings. And whether it's monsters or names of places or things.
Might need to pause for a second. We're getting in that again.
Oh, we're getting a stall. I'm actually seeing the stream still going, so it looks like we're.
Other people in chat are saying it's interrupted.
They got an ad. I see some people are seeing an ad.
I don't even have an ad. To me, it's just it's done. It says follow our live streams.
Yeah, well, I'll still continue because I can see it still operating on mine. So I think you have some people still seeing it. But again, those first 4 games were only related to each other after I kind of looked back and said, where did I leave off? Starting with Ultima 4, I at least started by saying, hey, let me get rid of all the things that are inventions, other modern inventions of other creators. So I specifically got rid of things like Balrogs, which belong to Tolkien. And while I was willing to keep some things like elves, because that is a traditional human
historic and mythological.
Exactly. So I'm happy to keep things that fit that category. But I even removed a lot of that. I really started focusing on New Britannia, or Britannia in that case, and things that we had invented ourselves, either that I'd already invented by chance during the first 3 Ultimas, or that I then on the spot started to invent with the virtues and the creatures and things that began to become part of the truly canon game, which really starts with Ultima 4 and then continued from there.
I had a question for you. So the virtues actually became a big thing around this point that you're talking about, when you're sort of trying to lock in what makes these stories unique. What made you think to put the virtues in, and how did you end up constructing them? Because it's like 3 principles become 8 virtues.
Well, so what's interesting about that is the Ultima 3 was Origin's first game. And even though just a minute ago I was talking about how I did receive a report thy feet letter as far back as a Calabath, I pretty much got none of those letters. Anybody that wrote a letter to either California Pacific or eventually or Sierra for Ultima 2, those letters were generally kept by their customer service. And if they were ever responded to at all, I have no idea. It was really only Ultima 3 where suddenly we got to see the letters that people would write in. And it was fascinating to see what those letters looked like, because they still today look a lot like they did back then, which is usually when somebody bothers to write in, especially in the form of a letter before texts and tweets and things. It was always one paragraph of, hey, I like the game. And then paragraphs at least, if not pages of, let me tell you what you did wrong. So let me tell you what I did not like about your game. And then also some about the ways they would play the game. And that's the part that I really found the most shocking, is because people would go, hey, I had fun playing Ultima 2 or 3, but the way I really enjoyed playing it is I would go around and kill everyone. I would steal from every shop. I would kill every character. And I had the most fun killing your character, Lord British. And so as I thought about that, I was sitting there going like, wow, I've just created 3 games in a row where the whole story is to kill the bad guy. The bad guy's not doing anything to be considered bad. They're just waiting for you in the final level. And instead, what I've created is the best way to min-max the game or have fun in the game is to be a bad guy, basically. You're supposed to be the hero, but you're really acting like a bad guy.
And even still, most sort of role-playing games, shooters, you just a big murderer.
That's exactly right. It's still the case. Is generally everybody's morally ambiguous at best. They're generally pretty negative. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to change that. I'm going to write a game about ethics and virtues. And then I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do that, what ethics or virtues am I going to put in the game? And you go like, well, okay, well, what systems of ethics exist in the modern world? And of course, you could say things like, well, I want to do, one good one might be the 10 Commandments. And I'm going like, well, I looked at, go glance at the 10 Commandments going like, I don't want to write a game about the 10 Commandments. That's would be disingenuous. I don't really it wouldn't be right for me.
Yeah.
So then I also said, well, what else is there? So you're going like, you could do the 7 deadly sins, but that's sort of for scary movies. It's not a positive aspiration. I couldn't even flip them and make them positive aspirations.
Yeah.
And so then I said, well, I need to go read. So I started looking up like all these Greek or Roman utopian, idealistic, moral systems of what they saw as their future. And frankly, I would argue most of those did not age well. They were still way too much an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth kind of, pretty mean-spirited stuff that I didn't really believe in. And then I said, wow, I've really got to go learn a lot more. So I started reading. I read every biblical or every religious text I could, from Christian texts to Mormon texts, Jewish texts, Muslim texts, Hindu texts, Buddhist texts. And I realized after all this reading, I said, you know what? I don't want any of them. None of those are the things I'm going to build a game around. And so I said, okay, I'm going to have to go invent my own damn virtue system. And I was going like, that sucks, because I was a terrible history student. I don't even think I ever took a philosophy class. And so I went and I just bought even more books. And so I started really digging in. And back at the old early Origin office, that was my parents' garage, I took a big wall and I started going through all these books that I'd been highlighting things in. And I said, okay, love's a good thing. I wrote love on a Post-it note, and I put it above the center line of this wall. Love, that's a good one. Hate, that's bad. That motivates you to do hate. Motivates you to do bad things, and it's sort of the opposite of love. So I'm going to put it directly below the line below love. And then I would find like the word compassion. I go like, compassion, that's kind of a lot like love. It's not the same word, obviously, but it's similar. And so I began to put all these words up that motivated people to do good things or bad things. And I was just reading things and collecting quotes and collecting words until I began to see a pattern emerge out of it. And the first pattern I saw emerge were actually the 3 principles of truth, love, and courage. And what I noticed about when I saw these 3 principles, truth, love, and courage, is that almost everything else I saw on the board, I could at least imagine in my mind's eye were combinations of those 3 principles, truth, love, and courage. And so, for example, I mentioned that I didn't support the eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. The code of Hammurabi, if you get caught stealing, they cut off your hand. And in some sense, the word, you might be able to describe that as justice during some period of time. But in my mind, if the person who stole food is starving, you sure as hell ought to have a little more compassion for them than just purely cut off their hand for stealing some food. And so to me, justice was truth, the truth of did you steal or not, were you honest or not, tempered by love or compassion to show, hey, I understand the circumstance you were in that motivated you that. So to be a just response to that is more nuanced than these ancient codes that I had read about. And so for everything else I could imagine on the board, I went like pretty much everything became more and more complex, either positive or negative combinations of these or missing attributes in more and more complex flavors. And so I started with those 3, truth, love, and courage. I ultimately created the 8, honesty, compassion, valor, justice, sacrifice, honor, spirituality, humility, came up with their opposites. And then I started filling the world with quotes to back these up. And I literally ripped those quotes off. I mean, so I was, whether they came out of the Bible or, the Quran or wherever I got them out of, I would use the name of whoever said it, mutate it a little bit, but then try to honor whoever made that quote that inspired me to think of that word was important to include within the context of the virtues. And what was interesting about this is you can tell I like telling the story. And I felt immediately that I was onto something important. But that's not what anybody around me felt. So I was still doing this largely alone. So Ultimates 1, 2, 3, and 4, I wrote basically on my own. I had a little bit of help on some coding bits or other kind of bits around the edges, but fundamentally I was working alone. And so when I would show Ultima 4 to my friends and family that were part of early Origin, they all thought I was making a terrible, terrible mistake. The feedback was literally from like my mother, my father, and my brother, and anybody around me in the office. they were going, Richard, you have this stack of letters where everyone is telling you that the way they enjoy playing your game is to kill all your villagers, to steal from all your shops. And what you're about to do is make a game where the thing they're telling you they love is going to make them not win. And I said, yep, that's exactly what I'm planning to do.
So the game was early enough that there were there other games at the same time that were basically doing the same thing?
No, not at all.
Because I don't remember like the timeline of like, I don't know when like the first
no. The only games
came out or whatever.
No, the only other games that were out at this time were Wizardry, Bard's Tale, Might and Magic, and the early versions of those. Wizardry, Bard's Tale, Might and Magic versions 1, 2, and 3 were in the same period. But those were all still Go Kill the Evil Wizard games. They were all, basically everybody still, but especially everybody then was doing Go Kill the Evil Wizard.
And even when you have a quest like you're the good guy, go do the right thing and murder people along the way to get it done.
Well, because everybody's min-maxing. I mean, that's one of the lessons of especially online games like we're all in right now today. Right. Is as you Keith, on this call, you have been talking about how you have or intend to turn up the spawn rate or value of a couple things at the very beginning. I don't remember what it was you were talking about. You were talking about the value of trading in some object, and you moved it from it's worth 2 gold or 2 points
and stuff like that.
Yeah. But because as you know, as soon as you make a little change in the min-max reward cycle, every one of the players immediately adjusts their behavior to do the optimal min-max path.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And so whatever path you incentivize, that's exactly what people will do. And so that's, when you think about the real world too, it's fascinating that, you think about good and evil and, human compassion I was reading an article today about, somebody making the case for, how long ago, 5,000 or 10,000 years ago, humanoids first began to support each other. Like when somebody got a broken leg, even before we grew plants or built houses, you would take that member of your extended family, and you would protect them from the wolves, and you'd feed them even though they couldn't forage for themselves. And that was one of the first examples of what you might call civilization. But it's still just as easy to think of that as you're still min-maxing your own survival, because the stronger your clan is, the better you can hold up against monster or wolves or predators or opposing clans. And so you want to keep everyone as healthy as possible, even if it keep you the real world. I believe compassion is also rational, and so it does not require fundamentally altruism. No one is purposely going to make their own life miserable for no purpose whatsoever other than to make sure other people's lives are not miserable. Everyone, even providing some compassion, gets something out of it. They either get a friend, or they help their own clan, or they help their own species, they help their own their community, whatever it might be. And so, and the reason we have, the reason why laws and other things are helpful is, one of the reasons I don't walk up right now to Diablo-Teen, who still looks AFK out there in front of me. One of the reasons that in the real world I wouldn't go up and punch him is because in the real world he might punch me back, or in the real world the police might come haul me off. But as soon as you're online, we begin to get this level of anonymity where you care less about it, and especially if we were spoofing and playing in another alternate character, then we would even be more predisposed or more willing to do bad behavior. And so games have to work hard to provide feedback that is not meant to stifle individual play. It's meant to give you the right min-max rewards. Justin, who's your puppy there?
That is Oswald.
Oh, Oswald, it's nice to see you. Delta's asleep on the floor behind me, so I can't pull her up right now. But
so the part of the reason why
we can't hear you.
Anyway, you get the idea on my stuff there. Back to you, Keith.
So part of the reason why I love the virtues is not just because it's sort of I like it because it's a combination of like sort of aspirational goals, philosophies, and that is easy